I mean, I've seen people before where, they're just like, I would never go to China, because I don't like communists. To be honest, what's actually really nice about China is that it's not very political when you're there, right? Yeah. Chinese people don't talk about politics. And whereas you're so exhausted from that conversation in the United States because politics dominates the conversation, right? Everyone's talking about the latest thing from Trump. Oh, guess what? We have the midterm elections coming in November. Then you're going to have another presidential election, which 18 months has a huge run up where you're bombarded with political adverts on your phone and the radio and TV, and it just dominates your life. And, for a lot of people, it's kind of like, gosh, I don't really want this. Like, I kind of want to just get on with my life, right? I want to work on my career. I want to connect with my friends. Let's go out for a dinner. Let's go on a holiday. And so I said, that's the thing I want more people to really realize more about China. What is one thing I want people to know about China? It's the simple fact that right now in China, there's, people sitting at a coffee shop, reading a book, sitting and having a conversation, talking
just
about,
like friends.
Talking about a date they went on. There's people, there's, a grandma who's going to pick up their kids from school and walk home and buy some vegetables for dinner tonight. It's a very normal society here. And I think that's where we tend to lose that human connection, where people kind of think, oh, China's bad, the government's not good. And then you kind of demonize 1.4 billion people without realizing that, no matter where you travel in the world, right, we all have the same ambitions, right? We want to have a good career. Hopefully we make a little bit of money that we can save. We'll retire it someday. We want to have a better life for our children. Hopefully, we can raise good children for, that live a good life. And that's really what we're working on, And I mean, I've traveled to 65 countries around the world. I've seen that kind of everywhere you go. Everyone kind of wants the same things in life, right? I mean, spending time with your family is important. Good meals with friends, stability. I mean, this is what we're all wanting for in our lives. No different in China.
Yeah. One thing really shocked me when I came back to China in March was that, I worked in New York City, and sometimes after work, take a cab back home, and on the Uber ride, you make small talk with the driver, right? And a lot of times that small talk starts with the driver saying, oh, this politician is crazy, right? Or Trump said this crazy thing, right? And politics became such a way to start small talk. Right. It permeates into everyday life. You meet someone at work, and in New York City, chances are the person you meet at work is a fairly mainstream liberal person. Right. So you start with dunking on the same politicians that most liberal people hate. Right. And that became this way to start a conversation, and I didn't realize how toxic, how tiring it is. And after I got back to China, I realized that the society that's supposed to be run by a one-party state, supposed to feed you propaganda, political propaganda, all day, every day, it's really, like, when people ask me what it feels like living in China, my answer has been, it's chill.
It's very chill. Yeah, it's very relaxed. And
politics feels so distant. Like, it's something you study at party school. It's not really something that people talk at dinner table, let alone do small talk. The Chinese people, barely do any small talk to begin with. Yeah. But to the extent they do, politics is so far off from what people usually care about.
I think more Americans would be very happy to hear that, because it is exhausting, and it's to the point now in America where our society is so divided, where you don't, you kind of have to know what kind of room you're in.
I mean, relating to what you were saying before, I think there is a reason why people are so kind of caught in this toxic cycle of talking about politics, because it mirrors their everyday living conditions, right? I think the politics of the United States at the moment definitely reflects the skyrocketing rent prices and the unaffordability of food, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the way that people kind of understand or process it together, by hating on a politician, et cetera.
Or loving a politician. Like when New Yorkers talk about Mamdani, a lot of, I get it. Like, when you live in a place where rent keeps getting higher and higher, and your wage isn't getting higher and higher, then comes a politician saying they're going to freeze rent. Of course you're going to talk about him.
For sure.
Of course it affects people's lives. So, politics become this very direct thing that you experience that can have a real impact on your life. Exactly. Whereas politics in China, to the extent we can call it politics, building up a community center in Jing'an district. Right. Is that politics? That is kind of political economy, that is politics, but also it feels very mellow. It's something that...
And it improves people's lives.
Yeah, it improves people's lives, but also in a very kind of mundane, and serious way. It's just what government does. It's what infrastructure, what public service means. Yeah. And that's what governments do or supposed to do.
Yeah. And I think like the anti-China perception that comes out of, the idea that, oh my gosh, China has people with machine guns everywhere, just overlooking you and surveilling you at all times, etc. That's a projection, because also having lived in the United States, in New York City really does feel like a police state. There are cops everywhere. The NYPD just swarms. And it's so insane that I'll be at the subway station, like any subway station, especially in Manhattan. And if I go to these specific ones, which I think as a New Yorker, you kind of have to start to memorize which ones are safe to go to or which ones you shouldn't go to. But tell me why there was like an army, like SWAT team there, just manning the gate so people don't like hop skip the fee, right? The $3 fee to get on the rusty, stinky subway.
Not only the stations, you memorize the exits. Like which exit has like police around or homeless people around, like really violent people around there.
Yes.
And it took me a while when I moved back to Shanghai to like get rid of the feeling that when I see a police officer, I have a physical reaction to them. Like I did a lot of pro bono in New York City, and a lot of my clients, like the only thing I did was like attend the bail hearing.
Right.
And the police officers, when they look at my client, even for that like very brief moment, like the sense of like absolute hatred, like it gets to you.
Right.
And when I got back to Shanghai, at first when I saw police officers, I just kind of like I didn't even, my girlfriend mentioned it to me. She mentioned that I would like kind of shirk a little bit. I would walk around them, like I would not make eye contact. And she's like, "What the hell? Like, what did you do? Like in America, like are you hiding something from me?" No, I didn't even realize that's my natural reaction. And now I got used to it. Like police officers, like they occupy a different like spot in society in Shanghai.
Literally yesterday, I saw 3 police officers just helping one old man. I'm not sure what he was talking about, but it just seemed like he was lost. He maybe had like memory loss or something, but he didn't know where to go. And 3 police officers were tending to his needs. That would never happen in the US, I feel like what I've seen in the US is some pretty like abuse of power from what I've seen, and a fear, like a real fear.
Sure.
And we had a bunch of visitors come to China recently that I took around and I showed them some places I love out here. And I asked them, what was the biggest thing that you noticed? And I thought, some of them would say, oh, how cheap the food is, da 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 da. But the first thing some of them said was, it doesn't feel like a police state. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Not only does that show me, okay, obviously, you're surprised by this lie or this perception about China, but also, what must you feel in the US where you're like constantly just so tense or like scared of the police who, aren't they supposed to serve and protect, right? Aren't they supposed to actually make you feel safe?
I remember like one of the last text messages I got when I was living in Jersey City was the city government texting its residents where was the last spot that an ICE agent was spotted in the city.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's like, if you are like someone who's impacted by this, that's a good thing. Like the city is texting out, and the city texting out where the federal agent is.
Wow.
Like
that's New Jersey, right?
That's New Jersey. Yeah, that's on the other side of the Hudson River.
I mean, U.S. has just become so crazy with that ICE agents and just the chaos, and that's you talk about that. I mean, there's a lot of like civil instability there because you're having protests and the police are here and this and that. It's just very chaotic. Where when you come back to China and there's a lot of organization here, and I mean, like I was on the bund this morning, just walking around early in the morning, just kind of getting ready for my day of media interviews, and but you just see 50 elderly people on the side of the bund with the Chinese music and doing Tai Chi. And it's just so peaceful to watch them. I just sat there, just watched them for like 5 minutes because I'm like, this is just so beautiful. Because I think for a lot of Americans, they would not, again, like we tend to kind of, demonize a country and say like China's bad, it's communist. And then, but all of a sudden, like if I could just bring you to the bund and just show you like, here's 50 Chinese people at 6 a.m, doing Tai Chi, with the sun rising up. And and you can just kind of see how happy they are, and it's just like, wow, this is really neat. And then like down the road, there's a guy playing a saxophone. There's the people with 2 elderly ladies with fans, just having a conversation. And so there's this really nice peacefulness that's here in China. And I think there's a much more simpler way of life. I mean, it's certainly like I'm in the United States for 10 months, and then in summer for 2 months I come back. But I would say, like for my wife and I, kind of leading up to like months 8, 9, we're like, okay, we're really ready to get out of the U.S. Like we're kind of like chomping at the bit to get out. And then by we're like, we need to kind of decompress from the U.S. We need to kind of get back to China where things are, really simple. And another really fun story is, with our 3 children, we're obviously very, very aware of their safety at all times. And then when we come to China, for example, I went to a store in Hong Kong. I was buying some, clothes. I bought these new clothes for these interviews, and my kids were like, "Can we get some ice cream?" And my wife's like, "Yeah, use my WeChat code, and you guys go get ice cream. It's on the 2nd floor." And my daughter, who's 10, is like, "We're gonna go by ourselves?" And she's like, "Yeah, you can go by yourself. You're fine. Like, you're in China. Like, no problem."
You don't let that happen in the U.S.?
We would never let that happen in the U.S. I mean, not a chance. But the kids, all of a sudden, they thought it was so cool because they're like, sweet, like we get to go get ice cream by ourselves. And they go up the escalator, down over there, get their ice cream, come back down. And that was like their little adventure. Yeah, we can't, you would never do that in America. It's not safe. I would never let my daughter, especially my daughter, but I mean, even my sons, I wouldn't let them out of my sight. They're 10 and 7. But yeah, I wouldn't let them go to a shopping mall in America by themselves to go get an ice cream. Not a chance. Not a chance at all. But that's why. So now it's funny because now, like when we go to a mall, it's like, can I get ice cream or can I get something? Like it's almost like I want to get something just so I can go by myself again. Because like I'm here in China, I get to do that. I got a taste, but it's like, hey, while we're in China, let me kind of take advantage of this. And so my daughter's like, do you need a coffee? I saw a coffee shop. I can go get you a coffee, Daddy.
That's so cute.
And so, but it's like she just wants like, give me some tasks to do because I can like go around the mall with your QR code and get stuff for you. And I'm just like, yeah, you know what, honey? Like when you're in China, you're safe here. Like I'm not going to worry about you. And even a funnier story, we were staying at a service apartment at Guangzhou. This is really funny. Like literally day one. This was last summer, so my twin boys were 6. And so the oldest twin boy, he runs in the elevator, and then the door's shut and goes up. And my wife's like, oh my God, right? That's like a 40-level building. And so she's freaking out. I'm like, okay, hey, like, it's okay, like we'll sort this out. So of course, like in the building, we got the security guards. And so, my wife's like freaking out, and I'm just like, hey, okay, well, one of us needs to kind of go up and figure out where he's at. The other one needs to stay on the bottom just to make sure he doesn't go out of the door. But we go to the Baoan, the security, and he's just like, and so my wife's freaking out, and we're speaking in Chinese, and he's just like, hey, like relax. He's like, we got cameras on all 40 floors. So like, and you got all 40 cameras right there. He's like, we'll see him when he comes out. And then he's just like, and then she's just like, you're Chinese, right? Like, why are you so nervous? And she's like, no, like we're from America. He's like, oh, that's why you're nervous. And he's just like, no, he's like, 没关系, 不要担心的, 在中国很安全的, 没事的. So it's just like, hey, you're in China, you're safe. And then, so all of a sudden we see him get out on the 39th floor, and we're like, oh, poor little guy. He's probably scared. He was only 6. But obviously we're like, we'll get him back. And so anyways, he ended up going back in the elevator, came back down, and, ended up being good. But it was just like the kind of attitude from the security guard of just like, oh, he's no problem. Like, we'll keep an eye out on him. And, my wife's like, well, what if somebody opens the door in the elevator? I'm like, he'll be fine. Like, we're in China. Like, we don't, but it's our mentality, right? Like, if we lost him in a building in America, we'd be very scared.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just a different thing. We live in Las Vegas. I mean, we just are very, very aware of our surroundings at all times. You don't want to be in crowded areas. I don't like to be in these big crowded areas in America. There's too many things that could go wrong. And that's just, I'm just being honest. I mean, that's just how I feel. Like a couple of years ago, our hockey team won the championship in Vegas. My friend's like, let's go down for the parade. Like, you're gonna have a huge parade, 100,000 people. I'm like, I don't want to be in a public space with 100,000 people out in the open, streets and stuff. And there's always some type of violence. There's always crazy people. There's gun crimes. There's all this stuff. Like, it's not worth it for me. So that's. You just got to be, I mean, that's just different. I'm just sharing my honest opinion as an American, a little bit of this different society. So, that's where, again, when we talk about those basic things in life, I mean, I think safety for me is a basic human right. I mean, if you can't keep your citizens safe on the streets, that's an issue, right? If your housing costs, your health care, your food, these are the basic things that have to be met in a civil society. And hot take. China does a better job at delivering that for its citizens than the United States does.
Yeah.
And that's why you've seen the China maxing. That's why you've seen people become more curious, why you've seen China on track to become the #1 tourist economy this year, because more people are seeing it. It's becoming big on social media. People are entering that very Chinese phase of their life, and they're loving it, and they're coming here to explore it further.
Yeah, absolutely.
大家好，我是主播周玉琴。很多的朋友告诉我们，选择原版的太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌，它添加有羽衣甘蓝，健康再加分。而有睡眠困扰的朋友们，赶快选择蓝色包装这一款晚安加强版，绝对是更有感。每日克菲尔，时刻美好 ，Good Feel Good。请上快点购为健康下单，而且要记得输入推荐代码，有额外的折扣优惠。太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌基础版、晚安加强版，新包装改版，内容不变，抽取更方便。要吃就吃最好的。